Hello and welcome back to RevelOGM Games. My name is RevelOGM and I'm here today to talk about, just give my thoughts and feelings on the 2024 Player's Handbook, everything you need to know D&D update that was released about a week ago, a little bit over, which had Chris Perkins and... oh, his name's in my head somewhere. The other guy, sorry. Going over the changes in the player's handbook and a little bit of the DMG and the monster manual. What's new in the new 2024 version? What's not new? What changes have happened? Things like that. I don't really play D&D that much anymore. As of the OGL scandal last year, I kind of was like, okay, enough's enough. I've got other things to play. I want to try Pathfinder. I tried Pathfinder. I liked it a whole lot more, and I've not really looked back. I do still occasionally play in a D&D. I do play in a D&D 5e campaign. Still, which is fun. And I do need to finish off a game that I am running, which is 5th edition. I can't convert it really very easily, so I need to finish that off in 5th edition at some point, and I've got third-party campaigns that I will probably end up running. But for the most part, I'm done with the system. But that's largely because of the people in charge and not the creatives. So I still thought it'd be interesting to see what kind of changes are going on and what kind of things are being done in this new system, and see how it looks. So we're just going to jump into it. I've kind of split it up. It is very thrown together, but it's just a simple kind of video. But I've split it up roughly into how they split it up in their segments on the video. So if you haven't watched it and are interested in it, I'll have the link to it down below. I've not put clips or anything in it here. I'm not that fancy. But each segment that they talk about will roughly correlate to the ones that I'm talking about. So hopefully that should make it quite easy to follow. So the first segment was, what's in the new 2024 Player's Handbook? It feels like a new version. They talked about all the changes and how it is still this whole 1D&D thing where it's not 5.5 or 6th edition, it's still 5th edition. And they did talk about how it's going to be so simple. We've kept it simple, but like the stuff you can't use in your old books and you can in your new books, and we've updated a whole bunch of the systems and some of the classes are completely different. So I still don't really get why they're not calling it a new version and why they're trying to keep it as 1D&D, but that seems to be the way it's going. So I don't feel like it's that simple. I feel like it's going to get a bit confusing, but hopefully I'm wrong, and it's not going to be confusing at all. Better martial stuff, finally. This is stuff that hasn't really been an issue for me recently, because you've got a whole lot more to do if you're a martial character in Pathfinder, and a lot of the stuff that is changing feels like it's just changing to Pathfinder, but not entirely. There's definitely differences, but they've given martials more options. They've got weapon mastery now, like in Pathfinder. They've added new things that aren't just combat focused, so that you can do other things outside of combat, carousing, things like that, like in Pathfinder. A lot of it is stuff that I'm like, that's cool, I'm glad you're adding it, but it's not reinventing the wheel. It is in other systems already. But considering this is the one that a lot of people play, that's still cool, I guess. And if it means I do have to go play more 5e in the future, and I wind up playing another martial character, I'm gonna have a better time than currently, where I'm used to Pathfinder having lots of options and then coming in and be like, I guess I hit them, and over again, whilst all your spellcasters do a lot more fun stuff. They talked about spells, having more spells, different spells, and how lots of the spells will also be more kind of RP focused and stuff, which is very cool. It's a good update. They talked about a rules glossary where you can see all the rules in one location. It's a great idea, because that is one of the trickiest things, is searching for your book, trying to find where this rule or that rule is. Streamlines that process. Very cool, love that. Yeah. Lots of things are changing. to stuff that other systems already have, but at least they got there eventually. They did touch on creating the new art and covers. The art looks great. The covers look cool. It's not surprising. It's great to see the passion from some of the artists who are talking about it. It definitely felt like it was there to be like, no, we're not doing AI, guys. We promise. Look, we've done all of this art ourselves. And the AI stuff in and of itself is still, quite messy because they clearly did use it, but then lots of people have claimed to use it where they haven't been using it, and it's actual artwork, and it's just AI is a big and complex problem, but the way that it was structured and talked about and being so near the start really did just make me feel like it was to push back against that. But it was also really cool to see some of the artwork. It does look really pretty. I love the fact that they had line art for like when you're starting to build your character, then when you get to your class, you get the full color stuff. That's a really cool idea. I do hope the physical book qualities will be in line with the art quality, because historically the books are not that great. I know that they've cancelled their current publishing contract, or did a while back now, with was it Penguin? I can't remember. But whoever they did, they cancelled it, so they're doing it in-house now or something. So hopefully that means the quality of the books will be better. Because compared to some of the other books I've got, it just does not hold a candle to them. So that is that's all good. They've got art for each subclass as well, which is going to be awesome. It's great because it is kind of a shame when you're like, oh, and I've got art for that subclass and this one, and oh, this one doesn't get any. It's just a few lines of text. That's a shame. It's nice to have that art. At least I feel like that's the case. Maybe it wasn't, but yeah. Anyway, the art's cool in essence, and art was always pretty cool. So I'm not too surprised there. Changes to backgrounds. Yeah, they changed them. They're more like half of the coin with your species now combined together to give you your kind of your character's history before they become who they are now. You get attribute modifiers from them, like ability scores, like in Pathfinder. But again, that very much makes it feel like it's more leaning into, this is actually quite big, because backgrounds barely ever get used in the history of me playing the games. Nearly never at all. Maybe use that skill once or twice, and you maybe remember that you've got this ability and use it once, and you use a piece of equipment like a couple of times, and that's about it. Maybe use them in your background a bit, and then you don't touch on that much. But this is good. This makes them more integral. I like that change. I think that's a good idea. Creating the new rulebooks. Biggest player's handbook. It's still not huge. I've still seen bigger player handbooks, or basically the same size ones in other systems. But this is going to be a thing they keep coming back to. Just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's better, but hopefully it is. The whole 3 books are supposed to be all like integrated, so the player's handbook, the monster manual, and the DMG. They're like, oh, we can't make it all as one book because that would be huge, and it would be, but also you don't need that because lots of players don't need the DMG. And that does be a lot more expensive, but that's a tangent. They said they've added more creatures to the back of the player's handbook, which is good. So you've got more stuff for if you're doing your wild shapes or your summoning, because there's a whole bunch of new summoning and changed summoning stuff. So that's all awesome. I think that's a great idea. And they've updated stat blocks, which is also good, because some stat blocks lots of stat blocks in 5e just suck. They're all like, it's the same thing, it just looks a bit different, but it hits you twice and then stands there, without adding, extra little bits yourself, or, things like the monsters know what they're doing, which is an awesome book, I'd highly recommend. So hopefully they're going to change a bunch of the stat blocks around so it'll be better, and that's going to be awesome. They've redesigned a bunch of ranger stuff around that and summoning, like I said, which just sounds great. Updated the spells, sounds great. Sounds like a new version. Just call it a new version, please. I'm going to keep saying that. It just kept happening when they'd be like, we've changed this thing, and this thing's different now, and it's better. And it's like, cool, I'm glad it's better. Why are we still trying to pretend it's the same version? Like, I know that lots of the core stuff's the same, but it's been the same since, like, 4th edition and 3rd edition, too. We still roll a d20. Anyway, that's besides the point. But all the stuff being in the player's handbook is good. So that you really don't need to like be flipping through other books. They said they added all the like subclasses into one place. You don't got the stuff that's in Tashas or Volos or whatever. Now it's more central. Not everything, I'm sure, but a lot more of it, which is good. Classes and subclasses. Lots more updates. Lots more psionics. Amped up the subclasses, so it's maybe more tactical, which is cool because D&D rarely has felt tactical to me. And that's okay, I never needed it to be, but this gives you far more options in that respect, which is good. But again, they talked about how the Archphase, basically a new subclass, and lots of the others are too, and they have added new subclasses, which again is like, okay, well, it's a new version, then it's not the same one. Weapon Mastery obviously changes things for any martial characters, and you can feed into that if you're a non-martial character wants to do that, which is cool, which is good. That's very nice. New feats on that note, and then ultimate unearthed arcana inspiration stuff. I kind of touched on that top one already. More feats. There's like 75, which, you know, if you've played Pathfinder, you're like, well, yeah, that's not a lot. But with how they work in 5th edition, not 5th edition, 1D&D, cool. You know, more feats are cool. More options are great. We always appreciate those. That's, again, why I love Pathfinder so much, because you get so many options. But having more in 5e is also great. And you get epic boon feats at level 19, which is cool, but they're going to have changed a lot for people to reach 19 more consistently. Like, I've barely ever got above, like, 12. Before the game's ended, the campaign's ended, or people are sick of it. So, cool idea. I don't know how many people are going to reach them, but I like the idea. They've put fighting styles into feats, and they've added more fighting styles. Another great idea. Really like that. Fighting styles were always kind of a cool concept, but it does make sense that, you know, just because you're not a fighter doesn't mean you can't have a particular style of fighting. But yeah, they did talk about Unearthed Arcana, and it kind of felt shoehorned in to me to be like, hey, yeah, guys, we have been listening to you. We have been listening to the feedback, and you've been doing great. A great community giving us the feedback. Thank you. I mean, I'm sure it's legitimate, but like, just after so many things that Wizards have done, it's hard for me to look at anything without being skeptical at this point. There we go. Inspiration, I do really like this change. It's now a reroll for any dice. It could be for an attack roll as present, but it could also be for healing, or assumedly for damage if your roll is abysmal and you really need a good one because you're like about to go down or something, and you think the enemy's really low. There's a lot more options, a lot more interesting because advantage is so easy to get. Inspiration barely ever felt useful. This is a much better system for this game. Really like that. They talked about the alt covers. They were pretty. They were gorgeous. They talked about how they want them to look like, you know, books. Books, again, cool. Just make sure that the quality is there. The alternates have always been better quality anyway, but still, yeah. Alt covers look very pretty. There's not much to say about those. You know, we're not really here for the artwork. How to use the new Player's Handbook. This book will replace the previous version. So it's a new version. However, one of the things they do point out is you can still use old adventures. And I do get how calling it a new version might be confusing in that aspect instead. But I still think you could manage it. You could just say 6th edition will be fully compatible with 5th edition adventures. Or with new prints of the 5th edition ones that are compatible with 6th edition. But yeah, anyway, because you can still play with a 2014 character next to a 2024 character, but at the same time, from everything that they're talking about, unless you had a character that you currently had that you wanted to use more, it just feels like they're not going to be as fun or as good. So you have this 10-year-old character, or, you know, created as if it was 10 years ago character, being played next to this character, and they're doing so many more things, you're just going to be sitting there and go, oh, well, I can't do that. So I don't really know why you'd want to. But if you've got 2024 characters, you literally have to use the new rules. It's 2024 rules because they've changed it. You know, things like the initiatives changes and stuff, which again makes sense. But But that makes it's just new. It's just call it all new. Um, it's not the same. I need to stop basting about that point because it's not worth it. Talk about how it's going to be better laid out, and that there is going to be kind of a thing that you can read from front to back. Fat chance that's going to happen, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. But they've added more like basic things you need at the start and stuff like that, which I think people can usually figure out, but good to know. They've also added longer play examples and art for those, which is cool. Play examples are always good, and having art that's not the characters feels very meta, which I don't know if we've really had that kind of aspect before, which is interesting. But I like it. The art looked a lot of fun. Looked very cool. More hand holding for ability scores, which I guess is cool. They talked about like if it's a new character and you're kind of stuck as to where to put stats, which I've never thought has been an issue for me or any of my players, even if they've been first time players. But I guess maybe for some people this will be useful. And they've got a bit of optimization for backgrounds, depending on what things you want to kind of make better install with your backgrounds in a chapter. Which again, if you're like trying to really like min-max, fair enough. If that's for you, that's awesome. They've put rules in for making high-level characters, which is great because everyone makes high-level characters. Because basically no one starts with the ones very often because they're not that interesting. Might be more interesting now, but appreciate that. So we've got things for starting at level like 3 or level 5 or whatever you want to do. That's awesome. I like that that's in there. And they've added more species. Noted they never said race, they all said species, including actual orcs, which is awesome. And more quote-unquote enhancements. Whatever that may mean. So yeah. That's all of that stuff. They did touch on the Dungeon Master's Guide as well. I think a bit more than they were probably supposed to. But it's bigger. Again, which they keep talking about how everything's bigger. They have got 5 sample adventures in there, which is awesome. I really like that idea. Campaign setting. A lore glossary. Again. And whatever bastions are. And maps, which is cool. What I do like, however, when they then elaborated on those things above what I seemed unsure, the example adventures are used to help you learn how to make adventures, which is a great idea. The example campaign setting is there to be used, but also to help you make your own. That makes sense. That's a good idea. You go, hey, here's this thing that we've given you. You can put your things into here and also kind of learn how this is done if you want to now create your own one. They've got maps for that in there as well, which is all great stuff, a very cool idea. And the lore glossary is bits and pieces where there's just not usually a general description, like what is Mithril? Lots of people know that, but new people might not know what that is. And it's got lots of lists of things like that, and that makes a lot of sense actually. So, new Dungeon Master's Guide sounds good. Sounds like a lot of useful stuff for DMing. So yeah, they also talked about how the first few. Maybe I come back to this later. Or did I skip it? The first chapters are supposedly like for new DMs. 2 of them are. I feel like I must come back to this. We'll move on. I'm guessing I come back to this. Okay. So bastions for building strongholds. That's awesome. That's a classic D&D thing that you really don't see very much anymore. Love that idea. And you can start them from 5th level, which is much more reasonable, because parties are probably actually going to get there quite a lot of the time. And it's a separate thing to do to adventuring, and it's your players who run that, not the characters. So even if you're not there, you can still do a bastion turn, which is kind of like doing your own little bit of DMing, world building on this small scale, naming your lackeys and stuff like that. Interesting concept. Great idea if you've got cancelled games, you can just get people to do a bit of this. I feel like this is definitely not going to be for everyone. Some people don't want to do the creating, they just want to exist within a world. I've certainly got a couple of players like that. You ask them for a description or something and it just makes them comfortable. It's not into that kind of thing. And that's perfectly fine, but yeah, so some people might be very lackluster or just not want to do this, but I'm sure there's a talk you can have with your GM or DM or whatever around this thing if they want to do it and other players want to do it. So crafting, and then tracking sheets. They've got limited crafting in the player's handbook, but still good that you've got a little bit in there. And then you've got more options in the DMG, which makes sense. So that's cool. Glad to see more crafting stuff. It's never a thing I really use that much, and it's a much bigger focus in Pathfinder. And I, to be fair, don't use it much there either. So crafting being there, very cool. Sure, some people will love that. I'm glad you get some options in the PHB. That's awesome. But yeah, chapters 1 and 2 of the Dungeon Master's Guide are kind of new for new DMs. A very short chapter in the basics at the start, and then chapter 2 is kind of learning about like starting building up your dungeon mastery stuff, which is good stuff to have at the start. And then chapter 3 is like all sorts of butts and bobs. Oh dear, all sorts of bits and bobs for GMing. All in one place. You know, you've not got poisons in one place, hazards in another. It's just all of the DM kind of toolkit, I think, as they called it. It's all in one place, which is a great idea. Much easier to find things. And yeah, again, they talked about how it's a new, fresh, better experience if you're coming from the old one to the new one, but also the best time to learn. New version. And final thing, monster manual that they talked about. Again, it's the largest monster manual. They keep bringing that up. They really want to hammer this home. I'm almost wondering if it's because, well, the prices are out. I was going to say because the price is going to be higher. I can't remember if they are. They definitely weren't cheap though, obviously. More than 500 monsters. That is definitely more than before. So cool. You've got enemies in it and some like allies, things you can use for allies, which is always great. You always want those options in there. They've rebuilt everything. So it's a new version. Like, so all the monsters in this are different, which means all the monsters in those campaigns that they're talking about surely are not going to be the same as these new ones, and not going to be as interesting. So I don't quite know how that balances out, but there we are. Obviously also new stuff, and they've filled in like the quote-unquote families, which is cool. So you've got higher and lower CR versions of certain monsters. So they talk about an even more powerful vampire and like a weaker vampire, so that you can fight these kind of classic enemies at higher and lower levels, which is a great idea. They also expanded on NPC groups with having more bandits, you know, more town guard, and also like pirates and performers and stuff. Again, good. CR has to stay the same because it's got to be compatible with the previous stuff. It's fair enough, I suppose. But higher CR monsters are also apparently now scarier. Which I'm assuming means they have more abilities and stuff, and they aren't just big stacks of hit points, but maybe they are. I don't know. I've not read them. But in principle, cool idea. Love that too. And they've also added more like apex monsters. So how you've got, you know, for monstrosities, you've got the Tarask. Is like the apex Tarask creature. So now elementals have like a super high, powerful elemental thing, and there's like a huge like walker thing for like automaton construct creatures, which I like. Those are good ideas to give more of those kind of things, some more options at high levels and stuff like that. That's cool. And that's where they closed out with that. So those are my thoughts. I'm going to probably go through each of the kind of classes and see what changes they made there and how those things look, and talk through my thoughts on those as well. But for this, a lot of the changes are cool. I feel like some of them, it's like I'm glad you're doing this, but it's, you know, years and years behind other systems that have been doing it first, and it kind of sucks that people are going to think that, oh, D&D's done this revolutionary new thing when it's in a lot of other systems already, but that's always been the way, so hey ho. And the version thing just still confuses me, with how different things are and how many updates and changes there are, but that is what it is, I suppose. So I'll leave this one here, but thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.